Number 3. I met Sarah at a coffee shop. It was the kind of chance encounter that feels like fate. She was sitting alone, typing furiously on her laptop, and I, being the awkward guy I am, accidentally spilled my coffee all over her table. She laughed it off, and somehow, in that moment, we clicked. I'll be honest, Sarah was beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made you stop and stare. But it wasn't just her looks. It was the way she made me feel, like I was the only person in the room, the only one who mattered. She had this intensity about her, a passion that drew me in like a moth to a flame. We started dating, and everything felt perfect. She was funny, smart, and so attentive. Maybe too attentive. At first, it was sweet, texting me every hour, wanting to know how my day was going, planning our weekends down to the minute. But after a few months, it started to feel suffocating. She wanted to be with me all the time. If I wasn't with her, she'd flood my phone with messages, asking where I was, who I was with. If I didn't respond immediately, she'd call over and over until I picked up, and when I did, her voice would be soft, almost desperate, like she needed to hear me to breathe. "I just love you so much," she'd say. "I can't help it." I told myself it was because she cared. That's what love is, right? But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Sarah wasn't just in love with me. She was obsessed, and her obsession was growing darker by the day. The first time I tried to break things off, she showed up at my apartment at 3 a.m. I don't know how she got in, but there she was, standing in my bedroom, tears streaming down her face. She looked so broken, so fragile, that I couldn't go through with it. I held her, told her everything was fine, that I wasn't going anywhere. But I was lying. I had to get out. I just didn't know how. Then, things got worse. I started noticing things missing from my apartment. Small things at first. A shirt, a photo, my toothbrush. I didn't think much of it until one day, I found a box under her bed. Inside were all the things that had gone missing. My things. I confronted her, but she just smiled. That same soft, desperate smile. "I just want to keep a part of you with me," she said. "Is that so wrong?" I wanted to scream that yes, it was wrong, that she was scaring me, but I couldn't. I was trapped in this twisted version of love, too afraid of what she might do if I left. Then one night, I came home to find my apartment in darkness. The power was out, and the only light came from the candles she had placed everywhere. Sarah was sitting in the middle of the living room, surrounded by photos of us, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Isn't this romantic?" she whispered. I tried to leave, but she grabbed my arm with a grip stronger than I ever imagined she had. Her eyes locked onto mine, and there was something wild, something dangerous in them. "You can't leave me," she said. "We're meant to be together, forever." I knew then that I had to end it, no matter what. I pulled away, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911, my heart pounding as I backed away from her. But before the call could connect, she did something I never expected. She laughed. Not the sweet, gentle laugh I was used to, but a cold, hollow sound that sent chills down my spine. "You think you can get rid of me that easily?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. And then she said something that made my blood run cold. "I'm already inside you." I froze. "What do you mean?" She smiled and pointed to my chest. "I put a piece of myself in you, a piece that will never leave. Every time you feel a pain in your heart, every time you can't breathe, that's me. You'll never escape me." I stumbled back, confused, terrified, but then the truth hit me. Sarah had been slipping something into my food, my drinks, for weeks. It wasn't love that was consuming me. It was her. Literally. I ran out of the apartment, heart pounding, mind racing. I ended up in the hospital that night, and the doctors couldn't find anything wrong. But I knew. I could feel her inside me, like a parasite, like a poison. I moved across the country, changed my name, tried to start over, but every now and then I still feel it. the sharp pain in my chest, the shortness of breath, and I hear her voice, soft and desperate, whispering in the back of my mind. "You can't leave me. We're meant to be together, forever." Number 2. It started like every other relationship, sweet, exciting, and full of promise. Jake was charming, attentive, and knew exactly how to make me feel special. We met at a friend's party, and from the moment he laid eyes on me, I was hooked. He had this confidence about him, the kind that made you feel safe, like you were the only person in the world. For the first few months, everything was perfect. Jake and I spent every weekend together, explored new restaurants, went on spontaneous road trips, and talked late into the night about our dreams and fears. I fell for him, hard. But then, slowly, things started to change. It began with small things, questions about where I was going, who I was with, why I hadn't texted him back immediately. I brushed it off, thinking it was normal. After all, we were in love, right? It wasn't until he started showing up unannounced at my work, checking my phone when I wasn't looking. That's when I realized something was wrong. But by then, it was too late. Jake's jealousy turned into something darker, more possessive. He became controlling, insisting on knowing every detail of my day, getting angry if I didn't answer his calls within minutes. He'd apologize afterwards, saying he was just worried about me, that he couldn't bear the thought of losing me. And I believed him. For a while, I convinced myself that his behavior was just a sign of how much he cared. Until the night he snapped. I was out with some friends, just a casual dinner. Jake knew where I was, but that didn't stop the barrage of texts and calls. I tried to ignore them, tried to enjoy myself, but the pit in my stomach grew with each vibrating notification. When I finally got home, he was there, sitting on the steps outside my apartment. His eyes were wild, and there was a darkness in them that I had never seen before. "Where were you?" His voice so calm, too calm. "I told you, I was with friends," I replied, my voice shaking as I fumbled with my keys. "You're lying," he hissed, standing up and towering over me. "You were with someone else, weren't you?" "No, Jake, I wasn't. You know where I was." I tried to keep my voice steady, but the fear was creeping in, tightening its grip around my throat. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist, his grip like iron. "Don't lie to me, Stephanie. I won't let you lie to me." I yanked my arm away and ran inside, slamming the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I locked it, backing away until I was pressed against the wall. I could hear him outside, pacing, muttering to himself. Then, silence. For a moment, I thought he'd left. I let out a shaky breath, trying to calm down, trying to convince myself that it was over. But then, I turned to the living room, my heart racing. The window was broken, shards of glass scattered across the floor, and there he was, climbing through it, his eyes locked on mine. "You can't hide from me," he growled, advancing towards me. "We belong together, Stephanie. Forever." I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a lamp, and swung it at him. It shattered against his shoulder, but it barely slowed him down. He lunged at me, and I barely managed to dodge, running for the bedroom. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my mind racing as I tried to figure out what to do next. There was no time. The door shook as he pounded on it, screaming my name. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers, but before I could hit the call button, the door burst open. Jake stood there, breathing heavily, his eyes filled with rage. He rushed at me, and I knew this was it, that this was how it would end. But then something unexpected happened. He froze, his eyes widening in shock. He looked down, and I followed his gaze to see the knife in my hand, the one I'd grabbed from the kitchen earlier, now buried in his side. Jake stumbled back, clutching the wound. his face a mix of anger and disbelief. You did this, he gasped, collapsing to the floor. I watched in horror as the life drained from his eyes. My breath came in short, ragged gasps, the room spinning around me. I had killed him. I had no choice, I told myself. It was him or me. The police arrived soon after, alerted by my neighbors who had heard the commotion. They found me sitting on the floor, the knife still in my hand, Jake's lifeless body beside me. It was self-defense, they said. I had no reason to worry. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I kept hearing Jake's voice, whispering in the back of my mind, feeling his presence in the empty room. It was just the trauma, I told myself, just my mind playing tricks on me. Then, a week after the incident, I found a note slipped under my door. It was in Jake's handwriting. I told you, you can't escape me. I'll always be with you. Forever. My hands trembled as I read the words. I had seen him die. I watched him bleed out on my bedroom floor, but somehow, he was still here. It wasn't until I moved out, started over in a new city, that I found out the truth. Jake had a twin brother, a twin I never knew about, someone just as twisted, just as obsessed, and now he was the one stalking me, pretending to be Jake, finishing what his brother had started. I thought I had survived, but the nightmare was just beginning. Number 1. It all started on a dating app. You know the one. Swipe left, swipe right, where everyone's filtered to perfection, and the conversation always starts with some witty line. That's where I met Emily. Her profile picture was a candid shot of her laughing, sunlight streaming through her hair. She seemed fun, carefree, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. I swiped right, and we matched instantly. Our conversations flowed effortlessly. We had similar tastes in movies, shared a love for late-night tacos, and bonded over our mutual disdain for early mornings. I'd been on my fair share of dates, but with Emily, it felt different. She was real, grounded, or so I thought. Our first date was at this trendy rooftop bar in town. She showed up in a red dress that turned heads, but she didn't seem to care about anyone else but me. We spent hours talking, laughing, and just vibing. By the end of the night, I was hooked. Emily was everything I wanted. Charming, intelligent, and most importantly, into me. Things moved faster after that. Within weeks, we were spending almost every night together. It was intense, but in that whirlwind romance kind of way. She'd leave little notes in my apartment, texts that made me smile, and always knew how to brighten my day. It felt like I was living a dream. But then, that dream started to crack. It began with small things. Emily would get upset if I didn't text her back right away. She'd question me about who I was with, where I was going, and why I hadn't invited her. At first, I chalked it up to her just being affectionate, maybe a little insecure, but soon, it became more than that. One night, I went out with some old friends. It was just a casual hangout, nothing major, but Emily wasn't happy. She texted me constantly throughout the night, asking when I'd be home, who I was talking to. By the time I got back, she was waiting at my apartment. Her face was calm, but her eyes were intense. "Why didn't you invite me?" she asked, her voice eerily quiet. "It was just a guy's night, Em," I explained, trying to keep things light. No big deal. But she didn't smile. Instead, she stared at me, unblinking. I thought we didn't have secrets. I laughed it off, but the tension lingered. Over the next few weeks, her behavior became more erratic. She'd show up at my job unannounced, wait for me outside the gym, and even question me about every woman I interacted with. Colleagues, friends, even strangers. It was suffocating, but I didn't know how to bring it up without setting her off. The breaking point came one weekend when I decided to visit my parents. I hadn't seen them in a while, and it was supposed to be a relaxing trip. I told Emily I'd be out of town, and she seemed fine with it, until I noticed her car parked down the street from my parents' house. I confronted her, asking why she'd followed me. She smiled, that sweet smile I used to love, and said, "I just wanted to make sure you were safe." That was it for me. I realized that her affection wasn't love, it was obsession. I told her we needed to take a break, to give each other some space. She didn't argue or cry. She just nodded and said, "Okay." For a moment, I thought she'd taken it well, but that's when the real nightmare began. After I broke things off, Emily went silent. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. It was like she'd vanished. I should have felt relieved, but something didn't sit right. It was too quiet, too easy. Then, the strange things started happening. My social media accounts were flooded with bizarre messages from strangers, women claiming I'd been sending them creepy DMs, screenshots of conversations I'd never had. My phone number was posted on sketchy websites, and I started getting harassed by unknown callers at all hours of the night. My work email was hacked, and I was getting spammed with everything from job resignations to fake complaints from clients. My boss called me in, concerned, and I had no explanation. It didn't take long to realize who was behind it. Emily was a ghost in the machine. She knew everything about me, my passwords, my habits, my routines. She was weaponizing my digital life, turning my world upside down without ever being physically present. And the worst part? There was no proof, no way to link it back to her. I tried to confront her, but she always was one step ahead. Her number was disconnected, her social media profiles deleted, and every trace of her existence seemed to disappear overnight. She became a phantom, haunting me through every notification, every email, every unknown number that popped up on my phone. Desperate, I went to the police. They listened, nodded sympathetically, but there wasn't much they could do. No concrete evidence, no direct threats, just a series of unfortunate coincidences that couldn't be traced. "It could be anyone," they said. "Are you sure it's her?" I wasn't sure anymore. Paranoia had taken root, and I started doubting everything. Every shadow felt like her. Every glitch in my phone, every delayed message, it all felt like Emily. Then, one night, I received a package at my door. No return address, just a plain brown box with my name on it. My heart raced as I opened it, half expecting something sinister. But inside it was just a single USB drive. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into my laptop. A video file popped up, labeled simply, "Watch Me." I hesitated, then clicked play. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of me, sleeping. The camera slowly panned across my bedroom, zooming in on my face, peaceful and unaware. Then it shifted, revealing Emily standing over my bed, watching me. My blood ran cold. I didn't remember this. I didn't remember her being there. The video continued, showing her lean down and whisper something in my ear, something I couldn't hear. Then, she smiled at the camera and left the room. The screen went black. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone to call for the police. But then, another message popped up on my screen. It was an email sent from my own account. "You can never truly leave me. I'm always with you, inside you." I stared at the words, trying to make sense of them, and that's when it hit me. The one place I hadn't looked, the one place I hadn't checked, the one place where she could still be. I rushed to the bathroom, staring at the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest. Slowly, I lifted my shirt, inspecting my skin, searching for any sign, any clue. And that's when I saw it. A small scar on my side, one I didn't remember getting. Just a tiny incision, barely noticeable. Suddenly, everything made sense. The sleepwalking, the strange dreams, the moments of lost time. Emily hadn't just hacked my life. She'd hacked me. That scar was her mark. She'd implanted something in me, something that let her watch, control, and torment me from a distance. I wasn't just being followed, I was being monitored, manipulated, like a puppet on strings I couldn't see. And as I stared at that scar, realization dawning, my phone buzzed with one final message. I told you, you can never leave me. We're connected forever. The screen flickered, and then everything went dark.